You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
It's Wednesday. I love Wednesday. You know why I love Wednesday, John?
Hump day.
What? Yep. Sorry for blowing out your speakers, folks, but welcome back to Mission Log Engage, the show where we read your comments on the air and engage with all of you. I'm Norman.
And I'm John. And yes, you could not have summed it up better. That is indeed what we do. You send us your comments and your thoughts. We read them, and then we get to talk about them. We're not talking about you necessarily, but we're talking about your ideas. Just want to make sure that's clear. Yes.
Use guys.
All use guys. Your ideas. That's what we're into here.
All right, John. So what do we have for today?
All right. Today we have an email from Jason. And this goes back to our DS9 discussion a bit here. So let's see what Jason has to say. It says, doing this rewatch of Deep Space Nine, and especially the war arc and even other episodes from the show, got me thinking about whether or not the show is trying to make a statement about free will. The most obvious at this point in the series is that Sisko seems to be divinely predestined for a fate, but it seems to me that there are many others who aren't in control of their destinies either. Take the Jem'Hadar soldiers and Rox and Shoals, literally slaves. They were more or less predetermined to die by a species that considered itself, if not divine, certainly a higher form of life. No set of choices they made could have resulted in them not being required to die in the service of the Founders, with maybe some degree of choice as to when and how it happens. Obviously, that's an extreme case, but what about Odo? Everyone seems convinced that his fate is to rejoin the Link, despite his choices otherwise, and he comes awfully close to doing so in these episodes. Is all his choices are doing, this is a complicated sentence, is all his choices are doing just delaying the inevitable. But someone like Bashir, he was genetically modified, and Starfleet seems to believe that such persons will be next to Khans, yet he chose to apply his strengths to being a better person and serving others rather than himself. Seems like they're saying you can overcome causality by your will alone, no? There's also the Worf-Alexander relationship, where the two are able to make choices which could possibly repair and overcome the damage from their pasts. Anyway, I don't think that the writers set out to make a statement about whether or not we have free will. However, I see it as an interesting lens to view the remaining episodes of the show, especially in light of more to come, as you like to say on the podcast. If DS9 is saying we do have free will, what messages and morals are they trying to say? If not, what time is the meaning? All right.
Heavy.
Wow. Heavy,
so Doc.
Just a little email about free will.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. What do you think about Jason's words here?
The interesting thing about looking at free will from a temporal standpoint is that you only really observe that, one, if you are at, say, 30,000 feet and looking at the ant farm and controlling the ant farm's movements by using godlike powers, in this case from the perspective of those ants, and saying those ants have free will, or the ants believing that they have free will, and you dam off one side of their work and you dam off the other side of their work, and they're just stuck inside this box that you've predetermined for those ants. But with inside the box, they're like, yeah, of course I'm going to walk this direction because I have the free will to walk this direction.
You got all that free will inside that box.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, in all intents and purposes, it really depends on the perspective of the individual, the intellect, versus what you can't see. And that is this quote unquote divine presence, or this force that manipulates time and space and your surroundings that you aren't necessarily noticing as you go about your life of free will. Yeah. That, I think, is where this entire predetermination juxtaposition of religion comes into play with Deep Space Nine. Do the prophets and their interference support the aspect of free will? Or have they already maneuvered everything to the point where free will is an impossibility? Now, let's look at it from the standpoint of, say, Benjamin Sisko, because he was born of a prophet. It's in the prophet's best interest to save that future prophet from either himself, herself, or the destiny that free will would have put them in danger or done something to them that would have ended the opportunity for them to continue further in the story.
Yeah.
For example, serving on the Saratoga during the Battle of Wolf 359.
Sure.
Or serving Starfleet, which is a very risky endeavor in and of itself. You're putting yourself in danger. Was Cisco supposed to die in that battle along with his wife and Jake and that entire ship? Or that was his free will to serve there? Or was it?
Right.
Or was it the prophets saying, nope, it's not your time yet. We're going to take you off this ship. So did he have free will in his choices because he was saved from a destiny that he chose himself, or did he?
Yeah. See, there you go. I almost don't want to go down that path again because I am so enormously frustrated with the Cisco prophet story, more so the prophets manipulating things to their own end for their own interests, which aren't really clear. You know, I still I want that expression of free will where Cisco can say, "Hey, I did your thing. Now I need my life." You know, here's my life that's important to me with my family and the people who I love and who love me. But that's a whole other rant I've already had.
Right.
So,
Let's take Odo,
yeah.
for example. So,
Mm,
he had free will to go join his people. But at the same time, though, that free will allowed his people to be plagued, by
mhm.
the virus that Section 31 created. So everything he did after that wasn't of his free will because he was manipulated into doing everything to reverse the course of action that he himself wasn't even aware of at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, look, if we are indeed having this much bigger, much broader conversation about free will, because Jason, this has come up in Mission Log before, even going back to the TOS days, and just sort of trying to start with this idea that human beings, and we can infer that the aliens as metaphors on Star Trek represent expressions of the human experience. Our free will is a little bit of an illusion. You know, we are bound by certain physiological realities and our environmental realities, and all of these things come into play that even make choices before we are conscious of those choices being made. That's kind of a cool, weird thing about how the brain works and how that brain body connection works. But at the same time, we have this sort of workable version of free will that says, well, when I go order lunch, I get to choose what I want for lunch. That's the kind of free will that keeps us from going mad, at least.
Mm-hmm.
We can get in a car and decide, well, I'm going to go this way instead of this way today. But there might be other factors that you are unaware of that are helping to guide that free will.
Sure.
When you get to a position like what Cisco is doing, well, then it all kind of goes out the window because you literally have this godlike force deciding what it is that they want. And because they're not bound by the rules of experiencing time, linear time, the way that we do, they can just sort of manipulate and move things around to suit their needs. And we haven't really seen that their needs are necessarily beneficial to Cisco as an individual or, say, everybody on Bajor who actually worships them on a daily basis. So, I don't know that DS9, to get back to your specific question here, I don't know if they're necessarily saying something about free will. Um, I think it's a very interesting counterpoint you have there about how Bashir sort of tries to break out of what his literal, quote, programming is. But I do think that DS9 sort of backs its way into this interesting expression of whether or not a character has free will. And I think, at least in the most important case, tragically, that answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Ben Sisko has the free will that he deserves. So, but that's just me. Maybe others feel differently. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just going to, if there's nothing else to say, nothing else to add on to that, I will remind everybody that they can interact with us. Send us your comments at missionlog@roddenberry.com or on Facebook and Twitter at missionlogpod. Be sure to subscribe to this very playlist, Mission Log Engage, here at youtube.com/roddenberryprod. Remember, we may engage with your comments on the air.